And we are going to go ahead and get started. I've got a very brief presentation and there will be plenty of time for question and answer at the end. That being said, if I go too fast or you have a question that you're thinking of whenever I'm going and just want to like drop it in the chat, feel free to do so and we can circle back to it whenever we get through this. Sound good?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Present. Okay. So welcome to the River Ambassador Informational Meeting, and thank you for taking time out of your day to even be here. I know that since everything's on Zoom these days, sometimes it can be taxing to be sitting through presentation after presentation, so I just appreciate you all being here today in general. My name is Shannon Hedge. I'm the Education and Outreach Coordinator at South Yuba River Citizens League, or as we affectionately call ourselves, Circle. And then Daniel here is our Community Engagement Manager, and he also works for Circle and is my supervisor. And together we both run the River Ambassador program. So a little bit about Circle, if you're not familiar with us, and if you are, you're going to hear it again. And I'm sorry, but our mission is to unite the community to protect and restore the Yuba River watershed. We are a grassroots organization that was founded in 1983 to defend the South Yuba River from proposed hydropower dams along the river. And in accordance with that, we achieved state wild and scenic status in 1999 for 39 miles of the South Yuba River, which means that there can't be any development as in dams or anything like that on that chunk, which is awesome. More about the Yuba River in particular. The South Yuba River, which is where us as River Ambassadors, where we operate, is only a chunk of the whole watershed, but it is one of the biggest ones at 65 miles long. Drops about 5,000 feet in elevation over the course of about 40 miles, starting at Spalding Lake up at the headwaters here-ish. The whole watershed, which includes the north, middle, and south forks of the Yuba River and all of its tributaries, is about 1,500 square miles and is shown on this map here. So it's a pretty big area, and I like to think an iconic shape, but maybe that's just because I work at Circle. The South Yuba River in particular is made up of a patchwork of public and private lands. So while there are a number of private landowners that just have houses along the river, there's also a bunch of different public landowners, including California state parks, and namely South Yuba River State Park, Tahoe National Forest, and then BLM land. The Yuba River alone sees about 800,000 visitors a year, and they're not all locals. Some people coming from, I think last year, a report from California State Parks said that we had somebody come all the way from Texas to visit, which is crazy, but people are visiting more regularly, coming up from Sacramento, and then even the Bay Area and Reno to the closer to the headwaters area. So people are coming from all over to see what we got going on here. So with those things in respect, why River Ambassadors? Why did we develop this program? So River Ambassadors all started because of a decrease in capacity for the South Yuba River State Park. They had a decrease in funding, which meant they didn't have enough park rangers to help watch and monitor different areas of the Yuba River, since the park rangers there not only work at South Yuba River State Park, they also work at the Malakoff Diggins and Empire Mine. So there weren't very many of them. It was hard for them to kind of wrangle the increased visitation. And so we thought we'd help out by forming this partnership with them and having volunteers. With the increased visitation as well, the visitors were loving what we call loving the river to death, because they were loving the Yuba River so much and recreating there that the river couldn't support the increased capacity. And we were seeing issues with increased trash and usage of glass, that kind of thing. And then there's also a number of safety issues for river recreation that we can find on the Yuba River. Rivers are dynamic in general, and a lot of people don't realize that. And there's a number of risks whenever you're recreating in the river, including foot entrapments, heat stroke just from hiking around because it does get really hot, any kind of trips, falls, cuts, anything like that. There's a number of those. And on average, the Yuba River sees about 5 deaths a year from drowning, mostly because of foot entrapments and people swimming under water tunnels and the like. So River Ambassador program was born. So now that we know why, what are we? What do we do? So River Ambassadors are volunteers that help educate and motivate visitors to keep the Yuba River healthy, clean, and safe. So we use nonviolent communication tactics to do this. And really we're there to help educate people. Since a lot of people are coming from out of town, they just don't know proper river etiquette or safety information. So we're there to help them get to that point so they have a safe and fun visit at the river. It's not only good for them, it's also good for us and the river. We also serve as the public's first face for the Yuba River and for Circle. Like I said, with a lot of people coming from out of town, there are a lot of first-time visitors. And so we like to welcome people to the river and make sure that they have a great time and that they're familiar with Circle in general. And if they're not, it's our opportunity to do so. River Ambassadors are also a voice for the Yuba, and we're backed by the Yuba River Safety Cohort, which is made up of a number of different agencies, including the Nevada County Office of Supervisors, Fire Department, Sheriff's Department, State Parks, BLM, Tahoe National Forest, etc. A ton of people all working together, and oftentimes we serve as the face of that as well. So what a River Ambassador is not. We are not park rangers, police officers, and medics. We consider ourselves river greeters and welcomers, and we are also educators. So we're not there to enforce bad behavior or good behaviors and proper laws or anything like that. We're only there to encourage the good behavior and educate people on how they should properly care for the river while they're there on their visit. So while we do help respond to emergencies, because we have satellite phones while we're there and help serve as that liaison between emergency personnel and a person that may have been hurt in an accident, we are not the emergency personnel. So liaison, but not an emergency person. And so some of the things that we educate people about is one of the big things, at least, is river safety. So because the South Yuba River is fed by snowmelt, we have high, cold, and fast water into early summer. That specific date changes every year depending on the snowpack, but typically well into June, sometimes even into July, depending on the precipitation we've gotten, which puts people at risk of hypothermia. Even if it's hot outside, the water could be very cold and affect you very quickly. And normally if it's that cold, it's also moving really quickly. So if you're not a strong swimmer, it could sweep you down the stream. Any children and adults that aren't strong swimmers, we suggest always wear life jackets. That's now easier since we have life jacket loaner stations at Highway 49 and at Hoyt's Crossing, where people can borrow life jackets that fit them and then return them at the end free of charge. Consuming drugs and alcohol increase the risk of injury and drowning at the river just because you're inhibited and you're not thinking straight. And then parking issues. It seems kind of like a silly one to include in river safety, but it really is a safety issue. Parking outside of properly labeled parking spots blocks the road a lot of times, and it reduces the capacity for emergency vehicles getting to the river. It slows response time down, which already can be slow if they can't pass all the cars that are blocking the road. And a lot of times time is critical for accidents. On top of that, there's no cell service at the river. Most of y'all probably know that. A lot of people that aren't local don't, and are just expecting if something happens, they can be able to call 911 or their friend or whatever. But we all know that you have to drive like sometimes up to 5 miles out of the river canyon to even get service. And a lot of times that service is spotty. So response times can be about 20 to 30 minutes without river ambassadors being there with satellite phones, since you have to climb out of the river canyon and then drive as well. So it can be a long time, and a lot of people aren't aware of that. In addition to river safety, we like to cover what we call the 5 Ps for education priorities. The first one is to pack it in, pack it out, and remember to recycle. Basic leave no trace rules. So if you're going, whatever you bring in with you to your river visit must come out with you whenever you're done. Pick up after your pets. Animal feces and human feces leave E. coli that can get into our watershed, even if it doesn't happen right away after the first rain. It will wash into the water. Plus, it's gross. So we encourage people to pick up after their pets, and we actually keep poop bags and trash bags with us that we let people have if they need them and don't have them with them. Prevent injuries, no glass. Glass is illegal on South Yuba River State Park property. And not only is it illegal, it's very dangerous to tiny feet and paws. Whenever glass breaks, a lot of times, most of you know that the river is very rocky. And when it breaks in those rocks, it's really hard to pick it all up since it breaks into tiny pieces and can get into divots. And it's really hard to see. So we tell people don't bring glass. It only takes a spark, please no fires. Yuba River Canyon is a tinderbox, and any spare embers that come from campfires or even grills could light up the whole thing. We unfortunately saw, and this is not like a human caused thing, but with Jones Bar, we saw how volatile that can be. So we encourage, make sure people don't light fires in our area. And then also, as I mentioned earlier, park responsibly, make sure that you're parking in a correctly marked spot so that we don't have reduced emergency personnel response time for if we have accidents, which hopefully they don't happen, but sometimes they do. And so while you're down there, like, you're not only talking about these 5 Ps and then safety, sometimes people just want to ask you about different recreation information about the area, especially if they're new. So this is a little bit about that. The 4 main crossings that river ambassadors try to be at are Bridgeport and Highway 49 always. And then if possible, we try to get to Edwards and Purdon. But Bridgeport and Highway 49 tend to be the busiest, so we're always there. So with Bridgeport, that tends to be the most family-friendly area. There's a number of flat beaches and more shallower swimming areas, including Family Beach and Nebone Beach. There's also a nice short kind of sloping trail, Buttermilk Bend Trail, and then the Visitor Center, which I think should be open by summer if everything goes to plan. But as with all the other river crossings, parking is limited, and if you park in the lot or anywhere close to the lot, there's a $10 fee. With Highway 49, there's no beaches there. You have to kind of scramble over some rocks to get down and choose a rock to sit on for the most part. If people do show up there, you could send them theoretically down towards Hoyt's Crossing, down the trail, since there are beaches, but as it is a clothing optional beach, it's probably not the best if you have a family with like 6 kids trying to go down that direction. Unless they want to do that, it's up to them. There's also typically Independence Trail and then the Trail to Jones Bar. Those are both closed at the moment because of the Jones Bar fire, and the parking associated with the Independence Trail is also closed for the moment. Not sure if that's going to reopen by the time summer happens, but it is also closed. And then in addition to that, there are Edwards and Purdon Crossing. Those are typically more locals than out-of-towners, but who knows what the summer is going to look like. Parking there is very limited, and the road is kind of wonky. So we always suggest that people use high clearance vehicles. Then there's the trail, South Yuba Trail connects both of those crossings. And there's also an emergency phone at Edwards. If people are coming up to you and it's just packed and they're looking for something a little more family friendly, or even just like has they couldn't find a parking spot and just wanted to chat and figure out where they could go next, we can always send them to Oregon Creek, Bear River Campground, Scotts Flat, any of those other places that are nearby. We kind of keep in back pocket in case people ask. So this is what the River Ambassador booth looks like. It's not going to look exactly like what it does on the right this summer, but generally speaking, that's about the materials we're working with and how we set it up. With COVID, it's going to be set up a little differently. So we will only have 2 people sitting in the booth at a time, and the chairs will be catty corner to each other underneath the shade structure, because it does get really hot and we want to make sure that y'all are safe as well from things like dehydration and also from COVID. So you'll be separate so we can encourage social distancing. And then we're also going to set up a barrier 6 feet, a rope barrier 6 feet out from the booth that surrounds the tent, so that people can't enter that barrier, and we can maintain that 6-foot distance between us as river ambassadors and visitors to make sure that there's really, really low risk of COVID transmission between us and river goers. The display table you see in the picture will also be on the outside of the rope barrier, and that'll have things like the bandanas we pass out, pamphlets, etc., and then also hand sanitizer. That way it's a no contact zone for us. We don't have to directly hand anything to river visitors, further reducing contact, and they'll be able to take it as they want if they need to. So typical day in the life of a river ambassador. These are the kinds of things that you might expect to do on your shift if you were to volunteer with us. First thing you always do is you get there around 9:30, 10 a.m., sometime in the morning. You set up your booths, and you also set up visitor signage. We have like big sandwich boards with signs on them. You set that up around the river crossing area. And then on your shift during the time, especially if you're under the booth or if you're out roaming or anything like that, you provide one-on-one communication with new visitors on rules and ethics at the river. So like I said, those 5 Ps from before, and also safety information, just to make sure everybody has a good time. We also remove trash and recycling from beaches and trails. You can see in this photo that River Ambassador has a trash grabber. We have those for y'all as well. And so if it's slow under the booth, you can always walk around the beaches and pick up trash as we go. We will also be monitoring the life jacket loaner stations that I mentioned earlier at Highway 49. We have to keep accurate counts every week to make sure that they're not getting stolen, or they're not damaged, because the damaged ones we need to remove. So we just go and we count those and make sure that they're all there and all in one piece. We will also be removing graffiti and dismantling fire rings as we come across it. Obviously, and hopefully, that's not an everyday occurrence, but sometimes it does happen. And so we take it upon ourselves to do those things while we're out there, since we're already there. We will be handing out river safety bandanas. We've been doing this for the past 2 years now, and we will have a new design in, I think, orange. It'll be bright orange this year for our safety bandanas. And then we also serve as, like I mentioned earlier, the liaison to contact emergency services whenever accidents happen. So we are equipped with satellite phones, so we don't have to climb out of the river canyon to call 911. We use the sat phones to call emergency personnel to respond, so we can reduce the response time, and it'll be a little faster. And most of all, you get to enjoy some river time. It's a beautiful day. You get to hang out by the river the entire time that you're there. It sounds serious. It's not serious. It's a super fun gig, and it's pretty chill. So it's good reason to get outside. So we are taking COVID very seriously, and in response to that, and we really, really want to make sure that all of our volunteers stay safe, and our staff as well, but mostly we want to make sure y'all feel comfortable. And so we have developed our program to have different levels of involvement based on the tier system that the state has put out. So in purple tier, we don't have booths. We only have roaming river ambassadors, and then it scales up to more involvement with our volunteers based on if we're in red tier, orange tier, yellow tier, etc. when it's back to normal, we'll have our back to normal issues, but it differs depending on the tier we're at. And we'll always make sure to communicate that with our volunteers as well. We will be requiring masks and social distancing from our volunteers. And if you don't bring a mask, we will be providing PPE for you. We'll also have gloves on hand for you for anything that you might need them for. We're also going to put in practice extra cleaning for materials and high touch items, such as that table where people can take items off of. We'll be cleaning that multiple times throughout the course of the day instead of just once. And we're encouraging no direct contact between visitors and river ambassadors, as in we're not passing them materials directly like pamphlets or anything, which is why we have that table on the outside so people can take it on their own. So that way we can keep you safe, we can keep our visitors safe, everybody wins. All right, and with that, we can take questions. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for now.
Yeah, so I was just wondering, I saw that commitment-wise, the program runs up through August, almost to September. So if you were to sign up to be a river ambassador, would you be expected to be available every weekend of the summer for that?
No.
Or what's the situation?
Yeah, so the program runs 15 weeks. I probably should have mentioned that prior. But we kick off on Memorial Weekend and then we end on Labor Day weekend. As a volunteer, you're not expected to be there every single day. We'd be asking a lot of you. I mean, if you want to, sure. Like if you want to be there every Saturday and Sunday, like I'm all for it, but we don't expect you to do so. With the way that it's set up, since we are kind of co-sponsoring this program with California State Parks, if you volunteer more than 3 shifts, you do have to go through a long, kind of extensive state parks training, which also involves a background check. But if you volunteer for less than 3 times, then you don't have to do that. So it just depends on your level of involvement and what you would want to commit to. Mostly, we used to have it to where people would have to go through that state parks training before they even tried it, only to find out if they got there and they didn't really like doing it, and then it was just kind of all for naught. So we want to make sure that you like doing it first before you commit to doing that.
Hi, I'm only 17, so I was just wondering like what effect that would have, and I'd emailed Daniel about it a little bit, and he said that I could maybe only do 3 things total, being a minor. Is that the case?
Yeah, with I believe right now with minors, they're saying it's 3 shifts. If you want to do more, they usually need a parent or guardian present. That's usually my biggest push on that one, especially for 17. I know they say for a lot of minors, they want a parent or guardian, but I know we've had a few 16, 17-year-olds that they usually hang out with our river captains. So yeah, I think she mentioned all of our booths have river captains. They're like a staffed circle employee who are there with you guys to kind of oversee the volunteers and kind of manage everybody. They're kind of trained on a lot of the emergency services and all that kind of stuff to, if accidents happen, they're kind of your main contact point to be like, hey, what do we do? Where do we go? And we train you in a lot of that, but they have the master booklet that'll give you all the information on rules and procedures. So in your situation, yeah, it's definitely it'll be at least 3 shifts that they can do. And we can talk to state parks. They might have their own standards for if you are under 17 for applying through the program.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any other questions? Anything about clarification or anything like that? Okay, I will mention, I think I did forget to mention the river captains earlier. But yes, those are paid positions, and there will always be a river captain at the booth with you that will kind of oversee all the volunteers on that shift. And if you have any issues or anything like that during your shift, or you're just not really sure how to handle a situation, always revert to your river captain. They'll know what to do, and they'll be able to kind of walk you through things. If not, just take it over entirely. And sometimes you might see Daniel and I down at the river as well. We like to get outside too. Okay, well, if y'all don't have any more questions, we definitely don't have to go till 7. There's no point in us sitting here for 30 minutes staring at each other. But I do appreciate y'all being here. If y'all are interested in joining the River Ambassador program, we will have a more formal training on May 12th. So it's another Wednesday at the same time. And that's not the one with like the long state parks thing. It's just like our side of things that goes into a little more detail about what we expect our river ambassadors to do, and kind of leads you through the nonviolent communication tactics and whatnot, and how you would respond to certain things. Yeah, so May 12th, it's all on the volunteer local site as well. There should be signups for that available. And we ask that you complete a training if possible before signing up for river ambassador shifts. That being said, if you plan on coming to the training and sign up for that, you can, the river ambassador shifts are also listed now if you wanted to sign up for those knowing you're already going to go to the training. But totally optional. You could always go to the training and decide this isn't for me and not sign up for shifts. And you can cancel your registration at any time on volunteer local as well, if you didn't know that. But no pressure, but if you want to, it does exist.
Cool. Yeah, good job. Thanks, everybody. If you guys have any other questions, reach out to Shannon or myself. We're happy to answer any other burning questions for the summer. Yeah, we'll be down at the river at some capacity. Last year was the river was hit really, really hard. So we're going to need a lot of help this year. We're expecting visitorship to be returning the same as last year. So we're going to need a lot more help than we have in the past, and probably moving forward. Sort of the Yuba River secret has gotten out, and I think the cat's out of the bag. So now we're working with a lot of the local agencies. I know Shannon mentioned the Yuba River Safety Cohort. They're a local group of all CAL FIRE, the Sheriff's Department, State Parks, BLM, the U.S. Forest Service, a ton of different agencies and nonprofits that work in the River Canyon. And so they're kind of we report back a lot of the stuff that we're doing and down at the river, any issues we're having down there, all of the statistics we're pulling, we're taking a lot of the information about who we're talking to, where people are from. The county uses a lot of that to get funding for better infrastructure down there. We're trying to get signage put in, mile markers put in, bathrooms put in, more parking lots. They're trying to put in a couple different parking lots down at the river. So yeah, river ambassadors are definitely like the first face of the county and of the watershed and of Circle. And so yeah, it's exciting. This year's going to be totally different, and it's going to be fun. So I hope you guys can join us.
Okay, and if there are no more questions, I'll let y'all go early. I know we're probably all hungry. I am. But yes, thank you again for being here. And if you have any more questions that you think of down the line, feel free to email me or Daniel or give one of us a call. Always happy to chat River Ambassadors.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a good night.
Yeah, thanks.